Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and here are 4 cards I made for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. So I'll have the image with the Color Throwdown as always on my blog post, and you'll see why I chose this stamp set. This is the Geometric Greenery stamp set from My Favorite Things. And I just grabbed 4 acrylic blocks and used all of the leaf images from this set, just putting them on either side of the block. And then I have some Gansai XL watercolor paper here, and I'm just stamping all the leaves with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And my intention was to make similar cards, yet just kind of a slightly different layout, I guess, in a way, which in the end I kind of flubbed up. Anyway, I was doing this so late at night, and I've been noticing more and more when I do craft at night after the kids have gone to bed and it's really, really late, my brain is just not working like it should. But anyway, I stamped all these leaves kind of randomly on all 4 pieces, keeping some, I did one on the upper left, I did some on the lower right, I did one just completely covering the entire background, just to give a little bit of difference in cards like this. It's kind of a fun way to mass produce and yet not keep everything exactly the same. So once I was done with all of that, I taped all of the pieces down to 2 different hardboards here with some painter's tape. And then I pulled out my Gansai Tambi watercolors that I haven't used in quite some time and played around and mixed up a bunch of colors. I mixed up way too much. That is one of my downfalls, is I way overthink and mix up way too much watercolor, but thankfully it lasts for pretty much forever. But mixed up an aqua color, a kind of a green color, and some gray / black. I just watered it down quite a bit because that was for the color challenge. And this is when I started messing around. I started just applying it messily over the leaves, and then I went back and did a second layer. Again, just keeping it messy. I wanted it really loose looking. I wasn't 100% sure. I had kind of a rough idea in my head, but things were just kind of not going where I wanted them to go. So then I started adding color all around the edges and kind of letting the colors blend into each other. And at this point, I was like, this is not looking good. This is a mess. It's like, no, I just finished ruining it. But I was like, I finished it, and then I was like, you know what, I'll come back to it later. Maybe my mind will change when I look at it after it's dry. I don't know. I honestly was just about ready to toss it all. But I went and did a couple of little things and whatnot, and then came back to it after it was dry, and then decided to try some splatter, because splatter usually fixes everything. I always say that. So I mixed up some of the gold from the Gansai Tambi on an acrylic block, and I started splattering it across these backgrounds. And I love the gold in this set. It's really pretty. It's kind of just a really rich gold. So splattered that on all these backgrounds, which are dry, because you definitely want to do splattering stuff when everything is completely dry. Otherwise the splatters are just going to meld into everything else. So I did that, and then I dried it completely, and then I mixed up some Copic Opaque White and splattered that as well, because, got to do as much splatter as possible. And it did it. The splatters really kind of rescued these. It just finished it off a bit and just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of takes the attention away from the mess I had made. So yeah, I was very generous with all the splatters. I used my splatter cubby here to kind of contain it all. I haven't cleaned my cubby for the last week or 2, and I've been doing lots of splattering. As you can see, it's pretty covered. I've had people ask me about that though. And this is just a vinyl coated hardboard or chipboard or whatever, and it folds flat. When you order it, it comes completely flat, and then there's just some Velcro pieces, so you can just set it up and then you can store it flat. And yeah, you just wipe it clean. So I've just got a microfiber cloth here that I got damp, and then I can just wipe down the sides and at least clean it up a little bit so it's not super messy. I don't worry about it too much. It doesn't need to be kept pristine. It's a splatter cubby. It's meant to get messy, but it was getting a little grody. So I quickly wiped that down and then just set that aside. And then I peeled off all the tape here. I had made sure to tape just to the very edges because I wanted to die cut all of these pieces. So I peeled off all of the tape, just making sure to pull it against itself. And then I'm going to run these through my Big Shot with the largest die from the MFT Wonky Stitched Rectangle Stacks Die-namics. This is one of my favorite sets. Really love this set because rectangle dies I could use all day, every day. I use them all the time. I love them. But this one just gives that perfect, fun, stitched edge to it. And like I said, it's wonky, so it's not a perfectly straight stitched edge either. So it just gives it that extra something. So I really, really love this die set. Every time I pull it out, I'm like, why do I put it away? So I did that with all 4 pieces. And then I pulled out a bunch of the new die sets that were just released from MFT. So I got Sending Hugs, Cause for Celebration, Well Wishes, and Peaceful Greetings. And I ran my chosen dies through the machine again with some gravel gray cardstock from MFT. And then I decided I wanted to make these glossy. And rather than, I was going to stack them, multiple layers, stack them, adhere them to the card. And then, I was thinking, oh, but it would look really nice if they were glossy. And I was like, I could add glossy accents to it. But I'm like, I'm making 4 of these. I'm going to be here all night doing this with this many sentiments, and they're quite large. So instead what I did is I just took scraps of cardstock and applied some honeycomb repositionable adhesive. And then I just pressed the die cut sentiment right onto there. So it's just have something holding it in place. And then I just used my hardboard because my scrap paper is under a pile of stuff. And pressed some Versamark ink all over this to completely coat that die cut sentiment. And then I just used clear embossing powder, poured that over, and then with that scrap cardstock there, I've got something to hold to keep everything in place. And that repositionable adhesive is holding the die cuts in place so that I can quickly melt these with my heat tool. Now you can leave it as is, or if you really wanted to, you could add another coat of Versamark, another coat of emboss powder. Like if you really wanted to make it really raised, super glossy, you totally could. I was fine with how this looks. In the light at the end with some of the pics, you can kind of see it's a little mottled looking. I was okay with that. It's only when it hits the light in a certain way. But if you wanted like a really smooth, glossy effect, you can do like 2 or even 3 coats and that would be just fine. But I was happy with just the one. So once I had everything melted with my heat tool, I just peeled it off those scraps of cardstock. And then to adhere these to my card, I'm just using some multi-medium matte adhesive and just applying that to all the like thicker areas of all these sentiments, not completely coating it. I thought about this afterwards. It probably would have worked to die cut these with some stick it adhesive, but with all the embossing and everything anyway, that might have been a bit more of a pain regardless. So this didn't take very long, but because they're being adhered to watercolor paper, I just put acrylic blocks over top once I pressed the sentiment in place. And the blocks just held the sentiment in place while the glue dried so that they are adhered flat to these card fronts. So I always started with the bottom part of these sentiments so that that's in place, and then it made it easy to line up the top part of the sentiment, and then the little dots for all the eyes and whatnot, I just peeled off with my little tweezers here. And then I would apply a dot of adhesive right to the back of that, and then got that into place. And then would just put the block back on and let that sit until it was completely dry, which only took like a couple minutes. So once I did that, since I'm making 4 of these, I decided to keep the insides of all the cards super simple. So I have a full sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock here. And I grabbed 3 dye inks from MFT. I have Gravel Gray, Summer Splash, and Factory Green. And I had all my stamps still on their blocks, so I just wiped off all the black ink and got them really clean. And then all along the bottom of this cardstock here, this full sheet of cardstock, I'm stamping the leaves in these 3 different inks, just to kind of look like they've just fallen, on the bottom of the card here. So I end up doing this twice to 2 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, just stamping all these leaves completely randomly all across the bottom. And then once I'm done stamping everything, I'm going to take both of these and score them in the middle at the 5.5 inch mark. So it'll all make sense in a minute. So I just pulled out my paper cutter and then my Teflon bone folder and lined this up at 5.5 inches. And then I'm going to score it straight down like so. And then I'm going to turn it and line it up at 4.25 inches and cut it in half. And there I've got my card bases. So I always use my Teflon bone folder to press down the crease there so that the card lays flat and opens and closes easily. And I'm just going to do this twice. So I'm able to have all 4 of my card bases stamped on the inside, scored and cut in a matter of just a few minutes. So scored the second piece at 5.5, turned it and lined it up at 4.25. Folded them over and pressed down on the insides, and then that way I've got the stamped leaves on the bottom inside of all of these cards, and all that's left is adhering all of the card fronts. So this is where I'd flubbed up one of the card fronts. It was the leaves were supposed to be on the lower right, and the sentiment was supposed to be positioned on what would be the upper left. I didn't notice until I started adhering everything, and I'm like, why do I have 3 that kind of look similar? I'm like, ugh. So not a big deal really, but I noticed it, and that's when I noticed. I was like, I'm way too tired to be happening right now because it just would have looked a little different, but really in the scheme of things, not a big deal. But that was my intentions anyway. My intentions were good. So I adhered all of these. I decided to adhere them all flat. I didn't add any more embellishments. You know, I thought, you could totally add some sequins or some enamel dots and all that stuff. Definitely, it would look gorgeous. I just decided to keep these all really, really flat. This makes just a nice little gift set, or if you want to pop these in the mail, you can just pop them in an envelope. You don't have to worry about any extra postage or anything like that. Just simple and fun, and the colors just, and all that splatter, it just works. It works. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post with links to the color challenge, links to supplies used, all that info in the description box below the video. And I also included links to a couple videos I did in the recent past using these same watercolors. So check them out if you missed them. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.